Okay, so let's talk about sports betting now, because sports bet that just got legalized down here in Florida. So that's a big ticket item for any Florida viewers, I'm sure, are going to want to know. How are those wins treated? All the bets are tracked. So do you, I assume you'd still need to report the same way as any other gambling winnings, right? You got to report any small wins.
There is absolutely no difference in all forms of gambling. Gambling is gambling is gambling to the IRS. Sports betting wins are other income, losses are an itemizable deduction. The one issue is, and we just don't know yet, it'll probably be about 5 to 10 years before we can, with 100% certainty, give an answer about sessions. Can we net related bets? For example, let's use like horse racing. If you're betting on horse racing, for example, you may bet horse 3 to win. You may have an exacta including horse 3, etc. All those bets are clearly related because if horse 3 has a lousy day, you're not winning any of them. And a case can be made that those are related. Well, what about sports betting? Let us assume I bet on tonight's NBA game for, say, the Orlando Magic, since you're in Florida. Okay, I am betting on Orlando to win. I'm betting on their star player, who I have no idea because I don't really follow the NBA, to score 30 points or more. I'm sure there's a prop bet I could do for that,
Oh yeah.
etc. Well, those bets are related. If the star player comes out and has the flu and doesn't play, Orlando's likelihood of winning is less. But we don't have any court decisions on this yet. It takes a long time for issues that are brand new to percolate through the courts because let's say this issue went to on somebody's 2022 return. The IRS audits it in 2023 or 2024. Then it'll go to appeals in 2024 or 2025. Then it goes to tax court in 2025 or 2026. And then it will go to a court of appeal if it's a large enough issue and it gets that far in like 2027. We're already a long way away. And a court of appeal can take a year to rule. So we're 2028, 6 years after. And most gambling cases do not go that high up.
Yeah, I know we were asking you for advice on our thing that we're doing with our YouTube channel, and I believe your advice was, since there had been no court case yet, is you don't want to fight somebody in court who prints money for a living, being the United States government. So I think that was very good advice.
Well, tax court is a very different animal in small court cases. None of these are precedential. So we do see gambling cases like this, and they give an idea of what the tax court believes. They're not precedential, but we can use the information. There just haven't been any. And sports betting really blew up over the last 2 to 3 years. It's still going to be at least another 2 years before we see such a case at tax court. The wheels of justice turn slowly.
All right, I have a question here about sports betting, please, before we move on. And believe it or not, it's sort of related to the gambling journal. But because I'm not a sports bettor, but I think you could go into a sports book and say you put up $500. Is it called the money line or something? $500 to win $1,200, right? So is this a situation again? If you win $1,200, you've already paid $500, but you have to claim the whole $1,200.
No, you have a $700 win. There's almost never a W-2G issued for sports betting because again, you need a net win of $600 or more and odds of 300 to 1 or more. Okay, so maybe the money line, if this year's Carolina Panthers played the Baltimore Ravens, the worst team in the NFL played the best, and you take Carolina, might be 300 to 1 or more. Okay, but it's literally going to take something like that. Where we see W2Gs in sports betting are prop bets on the Super Bowl and the annual contests. For example, many of the sports books here in Las Vegas have contests, survivor contests, where you can put down $1,000 and the winner take all, and the winner gets in the millions potentially. And those will be W2Gs this year.
Okay, thank you.
Now I have another question. So this back to the what we were talking about anybody getting in trouble for a small bet or not reporting a small win. Do you think with the online casinos getting more and more popular, this is going to become a bigger issue since there's going to be a lot more transactions of small wins that are there's a much bigger paper trail? Because if you're doing it online, if if you put $5 in a slot machine, win $5 and cash it out, it would be somewhat hard to prove that you won that $5. But I feel like in an online casino, everything is going to be tracked. There's bank transactions, money coming in, money coming out. Do you think that it's going to be a bigger issue down the line with people getting dinged for smaller gambling wins?
Yes, I absolutely do for the online. Some of the states are, the laws state that the licensed online casinos need to send information to the state tax departments.
Mhm.
Obviously, not a big issue in Florida because Florida does not have a state income tax. Not an issue here in Nevada because we also don't have a state income tax. But I do know that a few of the states have mandated it. So that means, and most state departments of revenue do share information with the IRS.
I know that there was the internet was in a bit of a kerfuffle. I think it was like maybe early last year or something when they were saying that Venmo was gonna, or they were saying that even when if you Venmo, those monies where you send money back and for like I pay you for dinner or something like that. If you put on your credit card type deal, they were saying that they were going to start submitting more information to the IRS on like I think it was like $400 or $600 thresholds or something like that. And everybody was up in a fuss over that. So I would assume that it's probably going to be something similar to that.
Well, that actually impacts sports betting. That's the 1099-K rule. It was delayed another year by the IRS.
Okay.
Although they said it's just basically to give people more time. It's really to give their computers more time.
Yeah.
The main IRS computer system dates to 1959. I did not make that up. Okay, it is the oldest computer system in use by the US government. If you are a COBOL programmer and need a job, call the IRS. You got one. Seriously, you'd have to.
Sorry. When I was in college, they were teaching COBOL. That was the programming language.
Okay. Mine was Fortran, which is also ancient.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away by what you just said. That's almost as old as you, Dad, that computer. And that's hard to do.
Oh yeah. That's what I was saying. Sure.
And for 2024, the threshold will be $5,000. It's something you need to realize for sports bettors, that is $5,000 of movement of money. 1099-Ks report movement of money, not income.
Mm-hmm.
For people like, for example, we process credit cards. I have a credit card machine right here on my desk. Okay, that's only one way, really. I mean, we accept credit cards and, that's income to us. That's duly reported on our business's tax return. But with sports betting, you may send $5,000 to an online casino.
Mm-hmm.
You might have $10,000 coming back, another $5,000. You may net zero and get a 1099-K for $20,000.
Mm-hmm. So could be problems down the line. Let me move on here to state taxes because we touched on it briefly, but I know that even though I'm a resident of Florida, we have no state income tax. If I went to Mississippi and won a jackpot there, I believe there they have a tax that they charge gamblers. Was it 3%? You're probably familiar with it. Yeah. So if I won $2,000, I'd have to pay $60 to the state of Mississippi for the privilege of playing in one of their casinos. But for people, so some states are didn't. So anyone who visits the Mississippi casino, keep that in mind if you go there. I don't know if there's other states that have that, but that always is top of mind. But for people involved in their own particular state where they are subject to a state income tax, how does that work? Say, what is it? I think Jean Scott, who was a famous gambler, she wrote The Frugal Gambler. She lived in Indiana, and I think she always talked about when she went to, they eventually moved to Nevada because there is no state income tax. There are some states where you cannot deduct your gambling losses. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And that includes Indiana, by the way, since you brought that up. Many of the states, they're mostly in the Midwest and the Northeast, do not allow gambling losses. And so let us assume you are a gambler and you are an amateur gambler, because professional gamblers always get to net their wins and losses. And you are in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and you have 100,000 of winning sessions and 100,000 of losing sessions. You're going to get those losses on your federal tax return. You're going to pay tax on 100,000 of gambling winnings on your state return. And the Wisconsin Supreme Court had a decision sometime in the mid-2000s, and they said, seems right to us.
There you
Well,
go.
if I was living in one of those states, I don't think I would be much of a gambler. But now there are some states where even the cities tax you. Is that? Could you give some examples of that one?
Ohio, I think, is the first one that makes me come to mind, right?
Mostly Ohio. Ohio has a 4-part income tax. There's federal, state, city, and a few places even have school district income taxes. Okay. In most states, if you hit a jackpot and get a W-2G, you will have tax withheld if you're a non-resident. Okay. Mississippi's a little unusual. It's not Mississippi state income tax that's withheld. It's a state gambling tax. Okay. But if, for example, you win a jackpot as a non-resident in, say, Iowa, you'll have Iowa income tax withheld. There are also city income taxes in Missouri that impact St. Louis and Kansas City specifically. There are city income taxes in Pennsylvania also, but for the most part, with the exception of Philadelphia, they do not impact gambling.
Now, we had information always on our website, AmericanCasinoGuidebook.com, and also when we were doing the book, that if you were to win a jackpot, a taxable jackpot in one of these states, and they were to deduct the taxes, that you could possibly file a state income tax form, even though you're from out of state, in order to recover some of the money. Does that work?
Oh, absolutely. If you let us assume we use Iowa as an example. You have 10,000 of Iowa gambling winnings and 10,000 of Iowa gambling losses, and you have W-2Gs. You netted nothing. You almost certainly can file an Iowa tax return and recover the withheld tax. Additionally, let's say you played one play in an Iowa casino, won 10,000, but you're a resident of Georgia, which has a state income tax. You will owe Georgia income tax on your Iowa winnings because you owe Georgia tax on your worldwide income. In order to get a tax credit for your Iowa income tax, you must file an Iowa tax return.
Very interesting.
No wonder for a world of taxes, isn't it? Such a fascinating subject.
Now, I've got another question for you, Russ. So this W-2G that we've been talking about, right? It's specific. It's like a W-2 you get from your job, right? But the G stands for gambling winnings. Currently on a machine, the threshold's $1,200, and that was set in 76, 77, something like that. So, right? 77. So so it's been around for longer than I have. They're talking about raising that to $5,000 strictly to account for inflation, because $1,200 in the grand scheme of things is really not a huge jackpot. Do you think that is there still talk of that happening or no?
Well, there's talk about it. I know the Nevada congressional delegation wants it to happen. There's almost no chance of it passing. The IRS back roughly 10 years ago proposed lowering the threshold to $600. Okay, that's the IRS's view. Congress did not go along with that. But we have a very large budget deficit.
Mhm.
I do not see much in the way of new tax cuts coming in the foreseeable future. So
Gotcha.
I don't see that happening.
I believe you said the same thing 2 years ago, and you were
Yeah.
right. So now we spoke a lot about all the gambling and taxes, various aspects of it, but if you had to sum up the one most important thing for people to understand about gambling and taxes, or the best piece of advice you could give them, what would it be, Ross?
Keep good records. That's my number on a list of 5 top points. That's my top 10.
Okay.
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 If you keep good records, taxes, no matter what you do, be it gambling, you own a business, and you get audited, you're going to have an annoyance. If you don't keep good records, it will be a very painful, potentially very expensive annoyance.
Now, I had one question because you had mentioned this several times before, right? That the things we've talked about do not apply if you're a professional gambler. Legally speaking, or from the IRS tax standpoint, what defines a professional gambler?
The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a case called Commissioner versus Gretzinger that a professional gambler is someone who gambles on a regular basis for their livelihood, basically to pay their bills. It can't be a passing fancy. In other words, you've got to be doing it to support yourself. If you are, the Supreme Court has said you're a professional gambler. And there's no arguing there. That is the law of the United States. If you're, once a month you spend 3 hours at a casino, you're probably not a professional gambler.
Okay, so like, well,
can you have two sources of income though, and another source of income besides gambling, but gambling would have to be your primary source of income?
Well, the IRS holds the opinion if you have any other source of income, you can't be a professional gambler. Courts have ruled otherwise. The court's view is many people have multiple occupations. It's basically, are you using this income to support yourself? Consider my profession, tax professionals. There are many people who work at places like H&R Block and the like, who work from February to April in tax. Well, what are they doing the rest of the year? They usually have other occupations. You absolutely can have 2 occupations. Courts have basically said, we know of no law or regulation that say you can't have multiple jobs.
Can you lose money and still be a professional gambler?
Yes. Mr. Gretzinger, very famously, was a losing gambler. But he was trying to win money. He was attempting to support himself. He kept fastidious records. One of the things, it's on the IRS website. The IRS website's actually pretty good. IRS.gov. There is a 9-factor test the IRS uses whether something is a business or a hobby. And
interesting.
You can look at that. And for example, something many people don't think of, do you have a business plan? Also, what kind of gambling are you doing? There are no professional roulette players. And the reason is you can't win money long term. If the house has an advantage every time there's a spin, volume is not your friend.
Right. Makes sense. All right, Russ, as always, wonderful to talk to you. You've enlightened us on so many things.
Well, I did have one last question here. Russ.
Oh, sorry.
Are you a gambler yourself?
I am at this point, I used to be a professional gambler, was for a couple of years playing poker. Now I am much more of a recreational gambler. This business is very full-time. We have a staff here, lots of people, well, relatively lots of people in my office, and I don't have the time. I also have other things in my life that I enjoy. But I do play poker on occasion still.
Oh, there you
All
go.
right.
I always wondered about that and I had never asked, so I figured I'd throw that in there. All right, Russ Fox, thank you very much for joining us. If people want to learn more about you or your company, where can they do that?
You can go to our website, claytontax.com. And there's a contact page there if they want to get in touch with us. I also have a tax blog, taxabletalk.com. It probably has about 5 to 10 posts a month.
Oh, that's cool. All right, well, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. Thank you,
Likewise.
Russ. Take care.